shot from Curry with 0.6 of a second remaining. The brilliant shooting of Stephen Curry continues. Back to Green, into the hands of Spurwell. Fast break down to Weber. He turns. Look up behind the back. And the step and the foul. What a play by Weber.
I've never seen a shooting display like this. Never.
37 in a quarter. Curry splits the defense behind the back. Fires a three. Oh, he puts it in. What a spectacular move. That could be the greatest move I've ever seen. Here's Curry for the record. It's good. There it is. Stephen Curry. The all-time three-point king in the NBA.
Fuck it. We'll do it live.
You are in. The Warriors Huddle with me, Bram, with me per usual. My boy and producer, Marcus.
What's up, Dub Nation?
Maxime is not here up front, but I am proud to announce that rejoining us after way too long, a true radio professional with time in college basketball, college football, college baseball, the Canadian Football League, and the NFL. A luminary voice within the NBA with more than 34 years of broadcasting experience in the association. A 2013 inductee into the Utica College Pioneer Athletic Hall of Fame. The immediately recognizable voice of the Golden State Warriors, who has watched this franchise grow up since 1995. And the best damn play-by-play announcer I've ever had the pleasure of listening to, Mr. Tim Roye. What's going on, Tim?
Not much. That's very nice of you to say that. It's been I'm truly lucky. I've been working professionally since I was 19, and it's never felt like work. I'm just blessed to be able to do this every day. So it's really been fun.
Let's get a familiar admission out of the way. Every time we have you on, I get way too excited and a little bit nervous. So if I start flubbing things, I apologize in advance. And I'll give you an example. I had a bunch of different versions of this open. I had one that included a man who became familiar with Sister Carmelita's metal ruler in grade school.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yep. I had that. Yeah. We St. Gabriel's school in Windsor, Connecticut. And they were pretty strict there. The best story I have of that is that me and two of my buddies and our dads volunteered. Each one took us 1 year, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We'd go see the Red Sox home opener. And so by the 8th grade, the nuns caught on, right? So that when they're doing roll call, they didn't even bother. They didn't even bother to say, they said, how was the game? Just like that right away. They knew. Oh, well, it was great, sister. Yes, had a couple of hits. It's fine. So it was good. Good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The back and forth you had with Tom about corporal punishment and your interactions with those nuns certainly caught my attention, and I really enjoyed it. MT, it's good to see you, man. We haven't had you for a while. Welcome back, man.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yeah, of course.
Hitting up the podcast for the home stretch as we get this 6th seed, hopefully.
It's the most important portion. And Tim, I'll give you another admission here. There are guests in my life who I save questions for. We do this mailbag thing and people are nice enough to give us suggestions, but sometimes I will take them and put them off into little categories, hoping we get people back like you. I have a full document of Tim Roye questions. So we are way too prepared for today. But before we get to any of those, we're going to start with a familiar segment. It's called The Glass Half Full. It's where we look back and we talk about things either we liked or we don't like about recent Warriors hoop. And I'll go first because I got to get this off my chest here. Last night was the perfect microcosm of this segment. In fact, I think it was the perfect microcosm of the entire season. It was filled
absolutely.
With all these things I don't like. It had poor defense. It had lazy turnovers. It had Jordan Poole falling down for no reason whatsoever at all. It had them seemingly not caring and me hating my television and ready to just give up. I thought it was the funeral of the dynasty. And then the second half came, and it's all the things we loved. Steph being brilliant. Draymond's using his intangible abilities to be invaluable. DiVincenzo tip dunks, Loon getting huge offensive rebounds. So what did I like and not like? Everything about last night. I don't know if I've ever loved and hated a game more than the range of emotions I went through. So that's how I'll start the bidding. What do you gentlemen have?
Well, that's right where I was going to go. We said that last night on the air, that you got the complete Warrior experience last night. That was the entire season wrapped up into one. And it's really a reason why they've been hovering around 500. They haven't been able to put together enough great games. But, last night was just a total Warrior, 22-23 show. I mean, it just gave you everything that this team has gone through all year long. And it took Draymond Green from having, almost an on-court meltdown to get them to get fired up about it. So it was a remarkable night, fun night for a broadcast.
MT, let me ask this follow-up and then to you. And Tim, you and I talked about this before the mics went hot, but let me ask you now. You are the consummate professional, and you've seen this team have much lower lows than we've had this year. But I'll admit to you, although I've seen those low lows too, this year has just hit me in an emotionally vulnerable spot. I've used this analogy before. When they were under Cohan and they lost, it was like watching Mr. Bean fail. It's fine. We didn't have any expectations. But now watching them lose feels like watching James Bond fail. It's like, this is not how it's supposed to be, and it's driving me crazy. For you, are you above this fray, or has this been driving you crazy too?
Well, I just think that last year they had some bad moments too that just got glossed over because they got off to that great start. So, and I think what we saw this year was the transformation of the bench, and you're trying to develop guys and still trying to win, and that's a hard thing to do. And so and again, I think every championship teams go through this. The Warriors, the core have won 4 titles. They've been in multiple finals. And it's like that old commercial, where the guys were playing pickup. I think it was a soda commercial or Gatorade. The guy goes, what's my motivation? And I think that's what the Warriors suffered through a little bit this year. What was their motivation? They've done it all. They've already proven themselves to be a dynasty and one of the best, groups of players ever to play in the NBA. Now what do they do? So, and they got into this rut on the road, which I could not explain at all. I've never seen a team be 3rd best on defense at home and 28th best on the road. I mean, that's like a CYO stack. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, it's been a challenging season because we've had so many Groundhog Day games. We've seen this game. So that's been a little bit of a challenge this year for our broadcasting team.
That's nice of you to say a little bit of a challenge. MT, what do you got, man? Like or don't?
Yeah, I mean, glass half empty. What I hate is, both of your points, the emotional toll that game took on me is just it's exhausting. Like to your point, I was ready to give up, and it's just like there's no point to even watch the rest of the season. At halftime, and then the other way around, I'm like, here we go, right to the finals again. So it's just the roller coaster is taxing.
It's maddening.
Full that I do like GP2's big defensive moment where he knocked the ball away from Ingram. I think it just highlights, the reason why it was important for him to come back. And however you feel about trading him essentially for Wiseman, I think he's showing his value there. And then 2 other things I wasn't aware of until they called it out on the broadcast. One, Klay Thompson has made the most 3-pointers he ever has in a season, which is amazing. And at this point in his career, I think is a beautiful middle finger to Charles Barkley and everybody else who wrote him off.
Two middle fingers, I think.
Also to Kevon Looney being mentioned as a potential candidate for most improved player. I had never even thought of that. And apologies to Luajuan, but I think it's well deserved. He's leading the league in offensive rebounds, and he gets us so many more 2nd and 3rd chances that are critical when we need them. That I would love to see him make the top 3 at minimum and be seriously considered to win it this year.
there are few things on earth that suck out my sporting soul faster than an offensive rebound against us, and to watch Loon occasionally do that to the other team is so satisfying. And to take your word, Tim, maddening. So last night, one of the reoccurring themes on this show is that I have emotional problems and a bunch of neurosis. And I proved that to everybody last night. I'm watching the game by myself in the back, and my wife and my 7-year-old are in the other room, and I'm screaming to nobody in particular. I'm by myself. And my daughter comes back and literally says, "Daddy, why do you watch this television show?" And my reaction was like, "I don't know, sweetie. I have no idea." And then after the game, I'm celebrating all this stuff. But it's such a unique entertainment experience. I mean, I watch movies. I watch all types of content. Nothing brings out the emotion that sports do. But I digress. I'll give you boys one more thing that I liked, and then we'll go to our golden questions. And welcome to Maxime. The other thing that I like is Draymond's ability to create conflict and then play through it. I've heard him talk about in the past, excuse me, that talking and playing at the same time is its own skill set, that not everybody can play through the kind of tension that comes when he's out there, shit talking or pushing people around. And so for him to go create conflict and then play through it is like Aquaman forcing everybody to fight him underwater. He creates this environment that is advantageous to only him and then uses it to his advantage. So that's what I like. But let's get to our golden questions. Tim, this is our mailbag. It always deals with the Warriors and occasionally gets personal. This one's more Warriors based, and here's our first.
Well, if any of them ask if I owe them money, don't believe me.
That's actually our first question. That's our first question.
Checks
right
in
here.
the mail. Checks in the mail.
Yeah, Jim in Ohio asks, "Tim, where the hell is my $100?" And it's weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Quote, "There seems to be a fine line between Draymond weaponizing his emotions to help the team and losing control of his emotions and hurting the team. Over the past few years alone, he has been both considered the heart and soul of the franchise and punched one of its rising stars in the face. How does Draymond's fire help this team, and do you believe it ever hurts?" So I got this one a while back, but it's on the money, right? We saw both sides last night. So what do you think? You have watched him throughout his entire career. How does it help, and does it ever hurt?
I think it can hurt sometimes when the emotion gets to a point where he takes himself out of a game. Whether he gets thrown out or gets a couple of technicals, and that's when it can hurt. Most of the time, it gives this team exactly what it needs, which is an edge. It's a team that relies on jump shooting. It's never been an overly physical team, with the exception of maybe when they had Bogut and Ezeli both playing at the same time. Maybe throw in David West in there too. But so they need that edge. They need that fire. And what he does for them defensively is it's like watching an artist paint a picture, because he sees things before they happen. And so he understands what's going to happen and directs the defense accordingly. And so the fire that he brings, which I think all great defenders have to have some fire in them to do that, because nobody wants to play defense, right? You want to score, right? So, but Draymond wants to play defense. And so that fire gives the Warriors that difference maker, that they're not just a big scoring team, but they're going to intimidate you a little bit. They're going to be rough, and he's going to get you out of his game by talking to you, and you're going to talk back, and all of a sudden you're more worried about Draymond than you are about doing your job. And so I think overall the fire helps. I think he's a Hall of Famer. I don't think there's any question about it.
I totally agree. I love the idea of viewing him as an artist. There was some video last night of him talking with Gary Payton the first, the original Gary Payton, and continuing that artist conversation. Is like Rembrandt talking to Michelangelo about their art. I'd love to hear what the hell it was that they were batting back and forth.
And the other part is that he has a level of respect for other players and players that have preceded him. If you notice in that conversation, Draymond was doing all the listening.
Yep.
GP1 was doing all the talk.
Yeah.
Okay. And so not a surprise there, but it just shows that Draymond has respect for people that he respects. And so it's an important part of this puzzle.
I love that read, because you know what I've never seen? A similar circumstance where Gary Payton was listening. Like you've never seen some other person, giving him advice and he was soaking it in. And it shows that Draymond is capable of doing that. I also love the edge thing. I remember, and I can't tell you which game it was. I think it was a playoff game, but Bogut got into a scuffle with somebody and pointed to his face and said, "Hit me." And I remember it stuck out to me because the Warriors never had edge. We never had anybody like that. We were always kind of the person getting bullied as opposed to actually having a bully of our own. And,
his rookie year, he came off the bench and went nose to nose with LeBron in Miami. I think it was his rookie year. Might have been his second year. Might have been his second year, but it was early in his career. And I was thinking, hey, we got a guy that's not afraid. He's going to stand up to these guys. And the Warriors ended up winning the game. I think Draymond won the game like on a layup or a putback or something like that. And to me, that was like, wow, we got something here. Because this guy, he was not backing down from the best player in the game. And
I remember him
as you said, same with Bogut, we hadn't had guys like that before. And so, at least in a long time. And so, Draymond was, he was the last piece to the puzzle. When David Lee got hurt in 2014 in preseason and Draymond started, we had a preseason game, I think it was down in Ontario against the Lakers, and the ball was moving, bang, bang, bang. And all of a sudden, I look up at the scoreboard, the Warriors are up like 25. And I was like, oh my goodness, I know it's preseason, but this is ridiculous. And so he was that final piece to the whole puzzle.
Marcus, do you think he's dirty? And so before we started this today, I was listening to 95.7 The Game, and it was Dan Dibley. And he was saying, look, I think Draymond's dirty. And it hit me in a weird place. It upset me, and I wanted to bring it up today. So you've watched him. What do you think, man? Would you describe him as a dirty player?
I wouldn't, but I think that's because I'm a Warriors fan. I think if it's really hard for me to separate my Homer take from him and, to look out there and the 29 other fan bases that probably call him dirty, for me to say you guys are all wrong is probably a little arrogant on my part. But, when I compare him to a player like Dylan Brooks, especially some of the things he's done this season, I don't think Draymond does those same type of tactics and moves, which to me are dirty. So I don't think he is. I admit it's probably a Homer take, but I think he's like Steve Kerr talks about his IQ on the court as a player. And I think that's one of the main things that gets brushed over a lot with Draymond and why he can walk the line so well. If you take away his edge, then he's a tweener that probably isn't in the league. He needs that. And that's what drives him. That's what makes him who he is that edge and that spark. Because otherwise, he doesn't really have a strong offensive game. So he needs that other part and those other intangibles to make him the player that he is. And when you add that, when you try to take it away, I think it leaves the shell of a player. So you have to embrace it and let it happen and take the good with the bad.
He was drafted in the second round because of his size, right? If you look at just the actual tangible things that you can measure, he's a second round player. But, he's a Hall of Famer and a dynasty builder because of that edge. How would you answer that, Tim? Do you view him as dirty?
No, I don't think he's dirty in the sense. I think he's physical, and I think he does try to intimidate some people. But, there's a difference between, like last time, running into a guy, okay, and or hitting a guy while he's in the air, okay. So there's a big difference to that, and I don't think Draymond has ever, he hasn't gone after people in a malicious way. I think he's doing it to get a hard foul to get his team fired up. I don't think he's going after a specific individual, with maybe the exception of the 13 to 15 Clippers. But those were fun days. But I think he does. He is very physical, and I don't think he's going to back down from anybody from that. So I wouldn't necessarily say he's dirty, but I would say that he does try to get under your skin and to intimidate you a little bit, and sometimes he does that physically.
if you have a certain level of success, which Draymond has surpassed after his first title, probably, you are no longer, in my mind, you're no longer considered dirty. Now you're considered edgy. Now you are a historically tough player. Charles Oakley comes to mind. You know, these guys who have used their basketball IQ and their willingness to, you know, be a little bit more physical than the rest of the people to help their team win while staying on the court, you know? Maxime, we haven't heard from you. What do you think, dude? And so wide open field. You can either give us a glass half full or weigh in on the is Draymond dirty question.
Well, I don't know that there's that much more to advocate for. You know, I'm also, of course, a huge Draymond fan and a huge Warriors fan, so I'm not going to go out and say he's dirty. But I do think that there is, you know, a high IQ player like Draymond is very respectful of the game in general, and that's why you see him being so deferent to Gary Payton, the first. That there's this understanding that the game is very important, and I think that's inherently going to make you not a dirty player because. Right, a dirty player, exactly like Tim implied, is the type of person that's going to try to knock somebody out when they're in the air and literally cause damage, right? Try to injure a player so that they're not, you know, injure somebody who's important so that they're not a part of the game when it really matters. And I think Draymond's above that. You know, I think that he gets really passionate, but it's all in service of basketball as opposed to a sort of a win-at-all-cost mentality.
Let me, Tim, show you one more thing on Draymond before we go to this next question. And Maxime, you have that video. Go ahead and light it up. This is a video that made the rounds. And before you hit play, what it's going to show is Draymond screaming at the bench after his fifth foul because he wanted the coaching staff to review it. And then Bob Myers coming over and talking him down. And as an overlay, we're going to hear Draymond explain what Myers said and how important he is. Go ahead and hit play, Maxime.
Draymond, how important was Bob Myers' voice on the bench? I think it was after that fifth foul, and kind of what was his message to keep you locked in on?
It was huge. He came down and he was like, listen, all right, you proved your point and you may have been right, but if you stay that way, guys are going to follow you. If you turn it around right now and get back in the huddle, guys will follow that. And it was huge. I got back in the huddle. I challenged our guys, and we went out and boosted the lead even more. So I think, you know, that's when you see, like, y'all don't always get to see Bob's worth, you know, and other than like putting a team together, but he's so important to everything that we do. Like I can't imagine, and I know this league, like GMs don't keep a pulse of the team like Bob keeps a pulse of this team, and maybe two other GMs in the league right there would come down to the bench and say something, and so and then that's also someone who I.
Got it right there. That's fine. Tim, this is a good transition to a question I've been holding in pocket because one of the things that has bothered me amongst a giant list of things that have bothered me this year is that Myers isn't re-signed. So the question I have for you is, because you have watched a lot of GMs come through here, not any with the resume that Myers has built, what does Myers add to this team? What value has he been able to put on?
What you just saw with that clip, which is he's a guy that listens to the players, understands their mentality, being a former college player himself, and a former player agent. So he understands their psychology, and his worth by his communication with the players and with Steve Kerr is tremendous. It really makes him special. And you could tell by that answer to Draymond that he appreciated the fact that Bob Myers wasn't afraid, wasn't going to, tiptoe around. He came down and told Draymond, hey, here's what you need to do now. We're right. Okay, we got that. Now you got to move on because the guys won't follow you if you don't go back in that huddle.
Yep.
And so that kind of spur of the moment, focused mentality is something players really appreciate because they understand that the general manager has their back. And so I think with all the players over this run, this dynastic run, they've come to appreciate the communication of Bob Myers and the concern he has for them as individuals. And Draymond and Bob Myers have been through a lot. They've had a lot of long conversations. So I think Draymond really respects it. I think that's why it happened the way it did last night.
If I am Myers' agent, I get an envelope. I get the clip I just showed you. I put it in that envelope, and then I put a blank check, and I put it in that envelope, and I send it over to Joe Lacob, and I say, sign this for Myers immediately. But jokes aside, are you worried that he hasn't signed yet? I mean, I told you I'm crazy, neurotic. I've been really worried about this. Is it cause for concern?
Well, I know I don't think it's a cause for concern because I think it'll work out to both guys' satisfactions. I think I think what Bob Myers doesn't want to have happen, especially with the way their season's gone, is to have his contract be the story we're talking about.
Yep.
I think he wants the team to be what they're talking about. So I think they'll get together at the end. And let's face it, it's a long time to be in one place. It's very rare that you get people all in one place for this long in professional sports. It just doesn't happen. And so, who knows? Maybe he wants something different. I don't know. But all I'm hoping for is it works out to what Bob Myers wants, what Joe Lacob wants, and what the team wants. I think if it works out that way, then we'll all be okay.
I love the read that he wants them talking about the team, not his contract. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me, and it adds some comfort. There's a reason why they're not, it's not front burner, because he doesn't want it to be front burner. So
absolutely.
Yeah. There you go. I've got a new segment for you that it's just burning through me. I keep going to the last page because I want to ask you about it, but I got to ask you this one first. Quote, when the year started, Warriors fans and pundits were positive they were a title contender. 77 games later, the Warriors are in 6th place, half a game out of the play-in, and have the worst road record imaginable. Do you still view this team as a title contender? What do you think, Tim? As we sit here right now.
I do. I think in a normal year, I would say no. But this is not a normal year. The West is wide open. Nothing against Denver and Memphis and Sacramento. They've all had great years. But they're not the types of teams that I think you go, whoa, there's no way you can beat them 4 times in a 7-game series. And I think if the Warriors are healthy and playing well, I think they can beat those teams. They can win 4 games in a 7-game series against those teams. Will they? I don't know. It's hard to tell with this team this year. We saw it last night. Which team's going to show up, the Jekyll or the Hyde? You don't really know. And so, but I think again, if they're healthy and if they get their ducks in a row, if you will, with that old cliche, but I think they have a chance just simply because the West is up for grabs.
If you could give them one piece of advice, a players only meeting, but you're also in there and you've got their attention for 5 to 10 minutes, what would you tell them?
I would say that put everything that's gone on this year with the road record and everything, just bury it, flush it down the toilet, whatever, that you still have a chance to do something incredibly special.
Yep.
And that opportunity is right there for you. Even though the basketball gods haven't smiled on them throughout the year, but they've left open this opportunity for you. And I think, there's a chance again to have this incredible run and, to get the rest of the league saying, oh no, here come the Warriors again.
Yep.
And so I would say you still have this opportunity and it's right there for you to grab.
I'd love that. I would then break into the room and add to it. And I would tell them, look, you're never going to have more energy. You're never going to be healthier. You're never going to feel better. This is as good as you're going to feel going forward. This is the best opportunity you have with this version of the dynasty. Strike now. Don't waste a moment of this. Not one moment. MT, you got a piece of advice for him?
Yeah, I would ask them respectfully to be as considerate and as much of a friend and just off the court support system for Andrew Wiggins as possible, and say all that to say, now that is there, can you please come back? Because that to me is the biggest X factor for us repeating. Wiggins' defense on Luka and throughout the playoffs, especially on Tatum and Brown, was in my opinion, one of the main reasons why we got a championship. So, it's a thin line. We want to be respectful of what he's going through, and it's bigger than basketball. So, if there's any point at any time where a player can say, okay, we support you, and, can you come back for these last, 16 games, and, we'll make it a sweep if you promise to come back, then I would do that.
I just wish they'd stop talking about him. Here's a stupid analogy. My wife and I were thinking about going to Hawaii for a while, and then we decided not to go. We canceled the trip. But for a couple of weeks afterwards, she would periodically bring up, like, where would you like to go in Hawaii? What restaurants would you want to go? And it's like, stop talking. We're not going. Why talk about? And so every time they give me a little piece of information, Wiggins is in the building working out every day. Stop telling me that unless he's coming back, I don't need these little nuggets of possibilities. They drive me crazy. I paused there, Tim, hoping that you'd give us actually I have breaking news, but
exactly.
Unfortunately, I don't. But I agree that Wiggins was a real key for the Warriors in their run last year. Remember, they asked him to be a better rebounder too, and he did a great job on the glass in the postseason. Yeah, he's that final piece, because then, look at the progress that Kuminga has made this year on defense. So if you go into the playoffs and you got, in the first round, second round series, you got Wiggins, Peyton, Kuminga, Clay. Now you've got a whole arsenal of wing defenders. That could make you really dangerous.
That's exactly right. Okay, here's the segment I'm excited to tell you about. So the name of it is First Pick, and the idea is pretty easy. I'm going to give you a scenario, and then I want you to use your 3+ decades of experience around the league to pick what person, your first pick, you would go to in that scenario. I'll give you an example. All right.
Yep.
Your team is down 1, 5 seconds left. Who would you want to pull from all the players you've ever watched? Who would you give the ball to?
Steph.
Boom. Next one. Bad news, Tim. There's been a misunderstanding, and now you have to have a street fight with Marcin Gortat in his prime. The Polish hammer is out there ready to come after you. All right. But good news, you don't have to go in alone. You get to pick any player, anybody in who you've watched over your career to have your back. Who do you take?
Matt Barnes.
Oh, let's go. Phenomenal answer. Maxime, who would you take there? Who comes into the fight with you?
My God, how could it not be Matt Barnes now? That's such a great answer. Based on all the conversations that we just had, though, I think Draymond might be a good one, too.
Why Matt Barnes, Tim?
I'm bringing Gilbert Arenas, and I won't tell you why, but you can figure it out.
That's cheating.
So let me give you a quick Gilbert story. We are practicing at the University of Miami back in the day. And we walk out to the bus after practice, and the bus is parked right by this palm tree that has coconuts in it, right? So we're kind of, goofing around, and a couple of us talked to Donald Foyle, said, "Yeah, what do you think?" He goes, Donald shimmies up the tree, comes down, breaks open the coconut, starts drinking some of the coconut milk. I thought Gilbert was going to die. I thought he was just going to keel over. He was so horrified that Donald went up, got a coconut, started drinking the coconut milk. He was just beside himself. He had never even seen that. I don't even think he even heard of coconut milk before that. So it was absolutely insane. Crazy stuff.
Also, nothing says you do not have a shot at a title like your starting center being like, yep, you know what? I'll go ahead and climb up that tree and grab one of those coconuts for you. It doesn't matter if I get hurt in any way, shape, or form. So here we go. I need the follow-up. Why Matt Barnes? Why, of all the people you've seen, if you've got to be in a fight, what is it about Barnes that makes him the perfect selection?
Because I think he's a real, genuine foxhole guy. I think he'd be the guy that would come to your aid without question. He wouldn't. He would wait until afterwards and find out all the miniature details about it. But if you were in trouble, Matt would come to your aid. I truly believe that. He's just a genuine person, and that's why I really, really liked his company when he was with the Warriors.
That makes sense.
And I was absolutely thrilled that he came back and got a ring with the Warriors. I thought that was just like a kind of the official tie-in between We Believe and the current dynastic run. I thought that was great.
And you and I both. It's epitome of a foxhole guy because he didn't even want to accept the ring. Remember?
Exactly. He felt like he didn't contribute enough.
Yeah, he was like, I wasn't in the foxhole with you guys enough, so I don't want the ring. And Steve Kerr had to talk him into it. So I think that's a great answer, and it kind of shows how genuine he is.
Well, I've always kind of disliked Derek Fisher, so Matt Barnes is the perfect guy to throw in this. All right, here's our next scenario, Tim. You are stuck. You are stuck on a 10-hour flight. You got to kill some time. You can pick anybody to be in the seat next to you to be a conversational partner. Who do you pick?
Donald Foyle. He's the only player that I've ever had the pleasure of being a friend with that would literally come to the back of the plane where the broadcasters and the other staff members sit, and he would have the op-ed page of the New York Times, and he would point to it. So we have to talk about this, and we would sit down. And so he's just a wonderful man, and he has a world view. He used basketball to help other people. And that's a really, really cool thing, a really cool attitude. And let's face it, he was he didn't get to play at a time where the Warriors were very good, but, he's truly one of the better shot blockers that this franchise has ever had.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I had a friend who is pretty close with O'Donnell, so close that he had his wedding at Foyle's house. And we went over there, and multiple people went up, and, they were just impressed that they were with O'Donnell, that it was a Warrior. And he was so genuine and so nice with every single person who came. He was in his house. He had every excuse to blow people. I don't want to deal with this. And instead, he made everybody who came up to him feel important. And I'll always remember that I was one of the people who came up and kissed his ass, and he made me feel important. So shout out to O'Donnell. Here's our next. You're on a team with Draymond Green. He's losing his mind, Tim. He's on the other side of that emotional bar we were talking about earlier. But you get to pick anybody to go in and calm him down. Who would it be?
Wow, that's a good one. Andre Iguodala.
Huh.
I think.
Why?
I think Andre would get to him. I've seen him do it a couple of times, and I think he would be a good guy. Probably a second choice would be David West.
Yeah,
those would be the two guys.
Yeah, and because David West did it right when he was like threatening Steve Kerr in the locker room, it was West who pulled him down. And at the risk of going backwards, D West is the guy I'd pick in my fight. The Marcin Gortat. He strikes me as the epitome of the not a hold me back guy. He is ready to go. Gilbert, by the way, strikes me maybe as a hold me back guy, but you wouldn't need to fight because of what he brings into the locker room on a somewhat frequent basis. Here's our last question, Tim, and we're out of the first pick. Quote, Tim has watched the full gamut of Warriors basketball. He called games for Golden State teams with less than 20 wins and watched the slow rise of a dynasty. Ask him if he's had a favorite team, season, or player so far.
Wow. Well, the favorite season, I think, has to be 14-15, when they just exploded. And the rise of a franchise is really the most enjoyable time because it's all brand new.
Yep.
And it's new for the fans. It's new for everybody. And it was just so much fun, so exciting. And, when we got to the finals, I remember that you're thinking, God, I never thought the Warriors would win a title. It never occurred to you that the Warriors were going to win a title. And here they were. And so that part would be, and what were the other two components of the question?
Player and team.
The player would be Steph. He's just the most down-to-earth guy I've ever met. Most unassuming, humble superstar that I think professional sports has seen. He's just that kind of guy. As my joke about him when he first got to us, he's the kind of, because he looks so young, right? He's the kind of kid. He's the kind of kid you were hoping would come to the door to ask to date your daughter, right? Oh yes, thank you. That kind of thing. So because he's just such a good guy, and he was raised well by his parents. And so as far as team goes, the championship teams have to be right there. The We Believe team was special too.
Yeah.
My joke about We Believe is that it's as close to I've come flying with that team. Was as close as I'm ever going to get to being on a real live pirate ship. You had Captain Nelly, you got Barron, you got Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes, it's you figured we had like a pirate symbol on the side of the plane for that. So it's just, what a group of characters, that you won't ever find together. But, that first championship team was really good. And again, it's hard for me to pick one team because the other one would be when Durant came. And I'll tell you a quick story. We were having training camp. We were down at, I think, UC San Diego. And I'm at practice. Practice ends. And I was doing some work on the computer. And I was going to go over and see what Steve had to say about practice. And look over, and Steve's talking to Jerry West. Wow, that's pretty cool. The guy who won the NBA Finals for Chicago with a jump shot, and there's Mr. Clutch and the logo, the whole bit, right? And I look, and there's Steph and Clay taking jumpers. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool too. Look at that with all these star power. And then I turn around, and behind me, at the court behind me, there's Steve Nash working with Kevin Durant on how to be more efficient curling off a screen. And I'm looking around, going, where have I gone to? What bizarro dream world is this? Where you literally have Hall of Famers everywhere you look. It really, that to me was unbelievable, and that's one of the best teams that will ever be assembled.
You've come a long way from BJ Armstrong and Bimbo Coles, Tim. You deserve being able to watch the slow evolution. I really appreciate this. I had a phenomenal time, and I'm sure that anyone listening agrees with me. For anybody who needs way more Tim Roye in their life, where do they go?
Just keep listening on the radio, or go to soundcloud.com. RC Davis will load up some clips every now and then, but the journey I've had with the Warriors has been remarkable, and I'm so lucky to work for this fan base, because every night when I go to Chase Center, every night when I went to Oracle, I never had to worry about energy. The energy would be there. The fans are tremendous. And, all my colleagues say they love coming to the Bay Area to announce, because they know it's going to be that kind of atmosphere. And this is the greatest. The other thing I love about our fan base is that, I'm not talking bad about other fan bases, but our fan base doesn't need the scoreboard to tell them when it's time to chant defense. Our fans, they know when a big possession is. They know what a big time in the game is. And so that part has always been so advantageous for me, because you don't have to cover anything up or sugarcoat it on the broadcast, because they know what's good and bad. So it's really, again, it's just been a thrill for me to work with this fan base, work with this organization. And you talk about the lean days. The Warriors are the classic example. It comes from the top. When Joe Lacob and Peter Guber, and they stood out there and said that's a lonely banner. And, we were, those of us who have been hardened, Warrior criminals over the years, they kind of looked up and said, okay, but they meant it, and they got it done in a big way. And, this is the run of the franchise, and I'm just so thrilled to be a part.
I was in that crowd, and I remember when Lacob said that banner looks lonely. If he had also said, we're going to sign, I don't know, a Yeti in the offseason, I would have been like, that's way more realistic than you guys bringing in more banners. But I'm bearing the lead. Let me say this. Not only a mutual love affair, Tim, it's us who's lucky to have you, not the other way around. I said it in the open. Let me double down on it. I have listened to your voice, man, for decades now, and you have narrated a team that was dog shit, and you've narrated a team that was dynastic. And in both instances, I just learned, was entertained. You have been phenomenal throughout my fandom, man. And so I'm sure I speak for everybody listening, and even those who aren't. Thank you. Really, thank you. You are a huge addition to our sporting lives.
That's really kind of you to say that. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Of course, it's our pleasure. For us, you want to let us know we did a good job, bad job, any job, you can shoot us an email to
Huddle, warriorshuddle.com.
We are also on social media right now. That's Twitter. Although I've got some announcements that we won't bore Tim with. That'll come next week. With that in mind, go Warriors. And hopefully we'll see you real soon.